Okay, we're recording.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Our guests, Guilford Mooring and Amy from DPW, and from schools, we have Jerry and Shannon and
Michael.
Michael. My first order of business as the chair is to make sure members of the committee can hear and be heard. And for the people who are here joining us to present, I'll just announce who each one is as I call them. Lee Edwards, who's here from the library.
Present.
Bob Hegner, who's on the council.
Present.
Nat Larson from the library.
I'm here.
And Lee, I did Lee Edwards already, and Sarah Marshall
Here.
from school. And Hala, who has just great, and Hala Lord from the council, and Bridget Hines from the school committee. And Bridget, I have you down as minutes today. We do get the Zoom out very quickly, so you'll have the advantage of that as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're ready to start, and Melissa, I'll let you say which group goes first.
Well, I think, is everyone okay with DPW going first? Do you guys have like which projects you want to pull up first? Your favorite one? Guilford? Want to just,
Bill Gifford, you're on, I see your lips moving, but you're on mute.
Yes. So you have the list. It's DPW starts on page. Well, actually, there's no page number, but it's in the draft.
It's in the third
Okay.
page.
And we have
okay,
the
so you
list.
just want to go by that order.
I'm
They like me to show your submissions, so that's what I'm going to pull up. It's not the, let me just.
We have those as well, Gopher. We have what you wrote, and we have the line. We have both of them. Yep.
okay.
Okay.
So we can start at the top, which is waste processing. This is actually something we do every few years. We have this place called Ruxton in the north end of town, and we pile a bunch of good material up there that we take from all over town, and we have a company come in and grind it up, and then we reuse it. So this $40,000 is what we use to pay the contractor to grind it up. The next, and if you have a question, just let me know.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
I'll watch for hands as we go through.
Mhm. Sarah has a hand.
Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, so at least one question about this first. Why is this a capital project and not just an annual service that you need performed? I don't see why it's capital.
we don't do it every year. We do it every 4 to 5 years. So it's not something we put in the budget every year.
Okay. All right, still don't, Melissa, maybe.
Well, I will say that Holly is not opposed to, and she is moving some of this stuff, but contract services is often under capital because it's considered like one-offs. And so he does have a cycle here of, like he said, 3 to 5 years. However, it's been processed this way because I think that probably the first year that they did it, it was like a new thing and it was a contracted service, so not done by the staff. And so that's the exception that I think that Holly has allowed this. It has come on the capital plan for a number of years. So
Yes.
not that it needs to continue, but that's why it's here. They don't have a budget for it. And so as a contracted service, it has been managed by a capital request in the cycle of, 3 to 5 years. Is that fair to say, Guilford? I'm a couple of things have come up like this, and that's kind of where we've gone with that. And I know that we talked about it in the meeting that we had preliminarily with Guilford and Amy about these kind of sort of recurring services, but at this time, we have no ability to put that in our operating. So for now, that's where it sits.
So Sarah, I just want to say this came up also with studies. There was a wage and salary study. Why is that capital? And we were told the same thing. It's a one-time expenditure that doesn't happen every year. So we don't have a way of making an operating budget go up and down this way. So that's been an answer in the past. I'm not saying that's the best
Yeah.
answer, but it's the way we seem to have dealt with this across history in the town of Amherst.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I mean, okay, that's been the practice, and I'm not an accountant, but I think, from other organizations I've been involved in, you budget, 1/5 of the amount every year and you stick it in a fund. Maybe cities can't do that, I don't know, but you
So we
save up
can't,
for it, and then,
we,
yeah,
we can't do that with operating budgets because all of that would roll to the free cash that we like to talk about here.
right?
So if they have a surplus in this budget, like if they were trying to save it up over time, they wouldn't be allowed to keep it. It would roll as unexpended. So, it's difficult for us. It's challenging for us to budget a different amount every 3 to 5 years.
And it doesn't make sense to do this every year? I mean, is it more
No.
expensive to do it every year? Is it more than 1/5 of the cost if you do it every year?
There's a for lack of a better term, there's a sweet pot in the size of the pile we grind up, and we try to get that pile. And usually, sometimes it can take 5, sometimes it takes 6 years to get the pile in the shape we want it to be in. And then they come in and they grind for 2 or 3 weeks and they're done. So it's
Okay.
not something someone wants to come in for mobilize for one day and do, and then come back next year and do one day and do. So it's
Right.
something we kind of build up.
Kathy, can I ask one more?
Sure.
It'll apply to many of the projects. For DPW, the answer to climate, does this advance the goals of the town's climate action, adaptation, and resilience plan? The answer seems always to be yes, but there's no explanation, and I would like to hear why the answer is yes for this and the other ones. Thank you.
So here we're actually recycling used material. So we're taking something that was used, sidewalk, asphalt, pavement, stones that were used for culverts, are actually and actually concrete pipe and concrete structures, and we grind it up and make a new aggregate out of it. So we're not mining new aggregate or having new material shipped in. We use this material for backfill. We don't usually buy backfill in other places. So it saves us from having to buy virgin material.
Okay, thank you.
Just my comment on that question, it's kind of an open-ended question, which doesn't really apply to everything. Like transportation, the next one, transportation engineering. We use that to do studies we do studies or to buy some equipment that's needed to address a question that's asked. We've done this for maybe 4 years now. 4 years, 3, 4 years, maybe longer. And it was put here as a capital thing to see how it would work. It's probably at the point where if we wanted to decide to put it in the regular budget, if there were funds for it, it would fit well in there. But this is what we use to hire a consultant or to do traffic counts or to buy traffic counters or to do types of material or types of studies. When people ask for, do you want a safety zone in Cushman or do you want something like that? This is what we use that money for. And yes, it hopefully leads to something that reduces climate, but you can't go to the next question on the form without answering the climate question. And we like to be positive.
Sure, maybe the form could have a third response, which is unknown. It would be
That would be good.
just a thought. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
So that's that one. Stormwater management program, we're doing our phase 2 program. EPA hasn't eliminated it yet. So we're still under the stormwater management program. We have definitive things we have to do. Mostly we're still in the testing and identifying areas of concern, and we use this money to bring an intern in usually in the summer, and we do testing, water collection and testing on our stormwater outfalls. At some point we'll want to make this its own probably general fund account, and we'll want to put more into it, and more will be required. But right now, we haven't got to that point. We are going to start requiring permits.
Jesse,
So
Bob has a question.
Yeah,
Well,
I see two. I see two, but I was just going to let him
let him
finish.
finish, Guilford.
we are starting this year with permits. So if you do a development or do any type of construction in town, you will have to apply for and receive a stormwater permit before you can proceed as well. So that's where we're moving. That's the big step we're taking this year in our stormwater plant projects and
So
program.
I see Bob and Bridget, and I'm not sure whose hand went up first. Bob's is on the top of my list. Bob,
So Guilford, you sort of alluded to this, but I'm looking at $100,000 a year, for the next few years, and I'm wondering whether we should be setting up some sort of, maybe even an enterprise fund for stormwater management that's fed by some fees. I don't know what fees we would charge, but it seems like it's here. I mean, who knows under the current administration in Washington whether it's going to stay or not, but presumably it's here to stay. And if it is here to stay, maybe it's time to go ahead and set up an enterprise fund or something like that.
We talk about that often. This is the first year we're charging for permits and implementing the permit program. We kind of want to see what we're actually going to bring in on permits for this. And that'll tell us if there's a small revenue source that actually makes 100,000. And that might be the revenue source to fund this in the general budget until we decide to make an enterprise or need to make an enterprise system. So we're kind of taking baby steps with this.
Bridget. You're muted.
Sorry. So Bob asked my question really, but I did notice Northampton has an enterprise fund and they have almost $2 million in it. So it was just, just would like to second hand in support of that.
So Melissa, did you want to talk
Yeah,
on this?
so
And
So
Sarah
I
Sanders.
know a little bit about Northampton Stormwater Fund, and I spoke with them at great lengths when I was in East Hampton, when we considered how to fund stormwater in East Hampton, which they, to my knowledge, I don't know if they've changed their mind since then, but we looked into it, and the process to get to creating a stormwater fund and your determination on how to bill it is varied across the state. So I went to a whole bunch of sort of working groups across the state about how to implement stormwater. Gosh, it's got to have been 10 years ago now. But I can tell you that when Northampton did their stormwater program, they invested over $1 million, and that was way back. So we don't know how much it would cost today. And they did an overall aerial view of how the community was laid out and overlapped it with GIS mapping and decided to charge basically a rate per square footage based on, I believe, the use of the property. So if you were industrial, residential or whatever, or if it was open space, there were different rates. And it was very expensive for them. I mean, so I would just caution you that yes, they have $2 million now, but they invested a lot. And then there is an additional billing, just like, so the way that Northampton chose to do their bills is that you receive as a Northampton resident a water and sewer bill, and then you receive a separate stormwater bill based on, I think it's permeable space from your aerial map of your property. And so it certainly is something to look at, but then what you're saying is that yes, we want to charge our residents another fee, and then how do we want to charge that other fee? And so other communities have done that slightly different, where they've rolled it into the sewer charge and decided to manage it that way. But I don't know what's the right or the wrong answer, but I'm just sort of saying it's a very big question that we can't just decide next week that, oh, we should do this as an enterprise, and it won't immediately become profitable. It will probably, you know, cost us some startup costs.
Sarah?
Yeah, well, Guilford said that they're about to or have started assessing fees for permits. So it sounds like part of that is it's underway, the charging, but I don't understand who is being charged and for what permits. And is this, are we at some point going to basically lay a second sewer system alongside our existing sanitary sewer?
So there's a lot of questions there. So we already have a storm drainage system installed in town. It's
Okay.
separate from the sanitary sewer, so there already exists a storm drain system. Not everybody is tied into it or has to use it or needs to use it. So that already exists. What we're charging for now are people who are disturbing their property. So if you're going to add on to your house and you're going to have to dig foundations, that's a land disturbance permit and could possibly fall under this permit. If you're building a building over on University Drive where you're tearing down everything on University Drive and
For
redoing
example.
everything, that's a land disturbance permit. If that's kind of how this works and how it'll go. It does not affect UMass property because they have their own permit. They have their own MS4 permit. Amherst College has its own MS4 permit. So they permit themselves through EPA. They actually had to do it a lot sooner than we did. So they've been doing it longer. So that's really nice. So that's the permit that's the permit we'll use. So it's right now just land disturbance. And what Melissa was talking about was a blanket fee that was charged to everyone in the community based on the impervious area of your lot, and things you did to reduce the impervious area of your lot gave you credits to reduce your fee. So
And
that's
it
kind
was
of the two ways
it's
to
an
charge.
annual fee. Right? You get that bill every, well, I think it was only annually. I can't remember if it was quarterly or not.
Northampton's annual.
Yeah.
Next, ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Sure.
The next one is $500,000 is added to the road paving. People don't like potholes, so that's why we do that. If you want to continue our pothole population, we can take that out. But right now, we kind of like to get rid of the potholes. It's time to harvest. The next one on the list is $500,000 for continuing to design the intersections at Southeast Street by the Fort River School. This number can be reduced. We can reduce this number to $260,000 to do some more design work. The design work, what we're proposing to do is have a model of the corridor constructed, which is the bulk of the $260,000 is constructing a model and calibrating a model. And then once the model is built and calibrated, then we can look at the different types of intersections and combinations of intersections in the corridor and come up with what we propose is what we want to do for intersection changes there. So that's what that money is for. And it could be reduced to 260 if we want to. We had that discussion last week and got that number.
Wait, but don't keep rolling. I have a question. I'm waiting to see if anyone else has a question. As chair, I try to wait. So if we, as a town, said for now, we might want to make for a smarter light up at the north intersection, keep the south intersection light and add a light where the buses come out and leave other work for later. And have the main focus on the study to the extent you need additional money on, could the road be wider or not? And what would we get out of it? So, measuring the width of the road and how much we could get. Could this either be dramatically reduced? Because I don't think I'm getting it. There's not a decision yet on how much we want to do. We've had traffic studies done, and you gave us a 4 roundabout view of it. And so I'm looking at, is there a minimalist approach so that we could see what happens with just trying to control the flow. With the north light doesn't have a left-hand turn signal. Do we want that or not? You know, but we don't have a wide enough road to have a left lane going north. So that's why I'm asking about the north light. And that was recommended by the design team. We had the subcontractor looking at traffic. They said that light could be better. So I'm looking at, could this be reduced further and still give the town an answer of, can we widen the road? What would the cost to it be, and what would be the advantage to it? Since that's an open question that we don't even know whether we can widen it. So I'll stop there, and I'm trying to lower it even lower than I like 260 better than 500. So I'm just wondering whether it could go lower and still get us further toward what are we going to do in the short term that is doable. And the reason I'm asking is for everyone, there is a state grant. Maybe this all disappears, but there has been a program called Intersections Near Schools. It's got a specific thing where, you know, you're opening up a new school, you're doing something with a school. So it's targeted for that. So we could position ourselves if it's not, you know, multi-million dollars. So that's my question. Sarah, if you have another one, maybe Gilbert could answer the combined one. So I'll call on Sarah next.
Sure. I didn't hear, maybe you didn't state, what is the basis for reduced or being open to a reduction to 260? Is that postponing some work, or you just think it could be done for 260?
No, that postpones final design of whatever we choose to do.
I see. Okay, thank you.
So for Kathy, this is the lowest number I would go unless you decide just not to do anything. Right now, the intersections have some really state-of-the-art controls. It's a system called No Traffic, which is kind of an oxymoron, but that's what it's called. You can Google it, and it'll tell you what it can do. And actually, we can get a great deal of information from the No Traffic system, but 260 is as far as I would go. And then if you really just want to see what happens, we can wait and see what we get out of having the school open.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sarah, did your hand go back up, or is it just not down yet? Okay, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, I sit on TSO, as you probably know, Guilford, and you know, TSO hasn't really decided what makes sense yet. So we're kind of stabbing in the dark here. And I don't even know if TSO would support, you know, kind of a further study, Guilford. I don't know. I mean, we're going to meet tomorrow, and I think we'll have a conversation about this tomorrow. So, you know, and again, I'm not sure which committee has you know, trumps whom on this, but I think if TSO decides that they don't want, you know, a detailed, you know, additional model, or you know, this additional model, I think we then may want to just postpone it altogether. So I think we need to hear what TSO has to say, and maybe it needs to go to the council before we get a final determination on this.
Bob, could I suggest, you know, since we'll be writing our recommendations up, so we've got a offer to go from 500 down to 260, to give us some feedback at the next meeting, whether maybe Guilford comes in and says, what do you get for 260? And is that worth having now or not, as a question, as opposed to next year? You know, that's because we can't answer that here, clearly, you know, on what he described as we're building a model and we're calibrating. That's $260,000 to build a model and calibrate. So I don't have a sense of what even goes into that if we're not talking about widening the road or designing a roundabout or a kidney-shaped roundabout. You know, if we're not talking about dramatic changes, I don't know how much we need to do that more sophisticated preliminary step. So that's all I can, so Sarah, your hand did go back up.
Yeah, very quick. If I understood Guilford correctly, Melissa should put $140,000 into FY 27 for this item. I mean 240, excuse me.
I would hold off on that.
Oh, I thought you said part of it would be, the balance would be delayed a year or something.
So the final design work will be delayed, but prices are changing every day. So it may not be as simple as just taking 260 out and the remainder is the design a year later.
So if we go to 260 placeholder right now, does the 6 million next year go away because we won't be ready for it?
You're not going to be ready for 6 million next year, no.
So 6 million could disappear.
It can
Well,
move. It can move a year out. Just to,
I mean, I don't, some, just so everyone knows, some levels of design and redoing isn't going to cost 6 million, depending on if we do go very minimalistic. It won't be free. Yeah, so I don't even know whether, I was going to ask, we don't have time today, but where'd 6 million come from? Because if we do at most one roundabout and we don't do a lot of other things, I'm not sure it's 6 million based on other roundabouts. But since we don't know what we're going to do, 6 million seems high. So that's, Melissa, you're doing the interaction with, what does that mean for the bottom line of now 2028, FY 28? So maybe you can get back to us on where the 6 million comes from and whether it could be a lower number or a range.
Yeah,
And
so
just so everyone, we're trying to worry about all 5 years a little bit so that we can figure out, how much squeeze we're going to have going forward. So not just putting a number that really we would never want that much money. So.
okay.
Okay. Okay, I think we can move on.
okay. Actually the next two items are new items, and they're because we're having an issue getting material in, and what we do now is that we have a traffic signal that needs improving, or we have to do traffic signs or traffic calming. That money comes out of the paving money, road repair money. So road repair covers traffic signals and signs and traffic calming. We're having a lot of requests for traffic calming and signage, mostly lighted signs, the RFBs and so forth. And we're having the traffic signals, we've been having quite a bit of knockdowns lately. We had the issue with the accident on Main Street and Southeast Street where a gentleman had a medical issue and knocked out the controller, and it was down for almost 3 weeks. What we need to do is build in some money on a repeating basis so we can keep a stock of material on hand. We had asked for $100,000. It was reduced to 50, which is fine. That's a start, but we just need to make sure we know that every so many years we're going to have to ask for this money and keep our stock up. We have, if you look around town, there's probably 10, 20 poles, light poles that are down, which we have not replaced because there was no, the money we were asking for light pole replacement, which is actually another item, wasn't enough to do that. So these three items, I started talking about two, but there's actually three. So traffic signal improvements is new, traffic signs and traffic calming is new, and we asked for 50,000. We asked for 100,000 in those, but 50 is fine. And then street light relamping we've asked for before, and it's usually around $12,000. And what we found is we really can't buy poles, which our biggest issue with our street lights is we're losing poles at a pretty quick pace. We have one missing at Atkins. We have one missing in front of the church next to town hall, which is Grace Church. Testing my memory here. We have a couple in the center of town. They're also missing, but we just don't have the money to replace them. So we just need to have a little more money, and traffic signal poles are actually, and traffic street light poles are actually going up quite a bit. The prices are quite high, and I don't know what they're going to be once the tariffs hit. So that's what those three are, if you have a question about those.
I have a question, Guilford. I'm looking for hands, but we had resident proposals, and one was to produce your speed at a blinking one, and there was a request for a light on Dana street light where there isn't one. Did you have a chance to look at any of those resident? And one was a crosswalk. So I'm just seeing that there's a slot now for traffic calming, but one was for a crosswalk over to the Wildwood Cemetery up
Yes.
on Strong Street. And so did you have a chance to look at them? We didn't have even a good sense of whether the numbers were accurate on what the cost would be and what the judgment was. And when we asked the police, they said, we like anything that calms traffic. So turn to Guilford when he comes to
Great.
you.
The Wildwood request, they actually talked to us quite a bit, and that number is a pretty good number, or it was a pretty good number 4 months ago when they talked to us. So I'd say that's a good number. I don't remember the other two. I know been sent them, but I don't remember looking at them as much, and they didn't talk to us when they developed their numbers. So those might need a little more funding and a little more work.
Well, we could resend you them and just get a reaction. So one was from Janet McGowan, which was a second blinking light with your speed is at a different location on a street. So, whether it's the right number or not, but last year we opened up a piece to say yes to some lights near school districts. So it's a question whether we're going to accept and put in any resident proposals this year and a judgment on which ones sort of get endorsed by the town. So we just need to get feedback on the specifics. Price is about right, and it's a good idea, or it's already in the plan. We have a master plan, and it's in the plan. It's just down at tier 2. So
We can look at that.
okay, that'd be great.
But the one thing we do run into is a lot of people want the driver feedback signs and other flashing lights, and they go online and get the prices off some website online. And we have pretty much a standard we use, but it allows that standard we use. We are able to talk to all of those lights remotely, and we're able to do work with them remotely. So it's we kind of standardized on it so we can do that. Some of the prices and proposals people were bringing forward or whatever they got off the website, which was the cheapest. And then that would mean we have to get more software and maintenance equipment to handle them. So we do like to try to stay with certain brands and items.
So I guess what I'm asking is both a price tag and whether any of that was proposed could fit it within budgets you already have.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, that would be great. So that gets us down to tree planting.
Well, I mean, I don't know if Guilford wants to talk about it. I believe that he asked for the roadside mower replacement and it was arbitrarily moved. So I'm going to give him the opportunity to
Okay,
I-
okay.
I
I see.
correct me.
By whom?
Me.
So we did ask to replace the roadside mower this year. The mower's over 20 years old now. We had a lot of maintenance issues with it the last 2 years, having to buy replacement parts. And we're finding that when you get to 20 years old, no one wants to provide parts for you anymore, and the parts they have don't fit your machine anymore. So we do need to replace this machine. It would be nice to replace it this year. We've gotten some prices, but we do not have delivery times if we were to buy one this year. So if putting it off a year may mean it's actually a 2-year put off, that it won't show up for 2 years, and we'll have to keep the old one going for 2 years, 2 more years. So if it's possible, I'd like to move forward, but I understand.
Sarah,
Does the town own more than one of these? Or
No.
this is the only one we have?
This is our only big roadside mower.
Thank you.
any other questions? then we get to the little number, the 40,000.
And
Nat,
Oh, yes, this comes up a bit higher in the list, but it looked like Guilford had a request for sidewalks around town, 50,000, and it's not in FY 26. It's in FY 27 and beyond. So just wondering what the status is of that, why it's, should it be in 26, and if not, why?
thank you. I meant to ask that too. So you're saying that it's a blank, why isn't there a request for 50 in 2026? That's the question.
there was a request in 2026, but we do have some money left over from previous years, and I think that was just moved out because there's still some money in previous years.
Great.
Great. That's a good answer.
Melissa, you can correct me though if she knows another reason.
I can't remember why that one was moved.
So then the $40,000 is what we use to support some of the larger tree work we do. That we use it to rent a crane when we need a crane to come in and take down large trees. And then we also use it, we try to split it up and use 20,000 for crane services. And we try to use the rest for tree planting services. And it usually ends up being a quarter goes to tree planting and 3/4 goes to tree removal with the cranes.
Both Nat and Sarah had their hand up on this one.
Oh, just to clarify, so the tree planting, that's also a third-party contract, not done internally?
No, we buy the trees from a nursery or so forth, but the planting is done. Usually it's done by volunteers who work with the shade tree committee and the tree
Oh, I see.
wardens,
So the funding here is just for the materials.
just for the materials.
Sarah,
And my question really is global in that I think every one of the projects you've just described is listed as being of high priority. So is that really the case? You've pruned your list, you put off anything that can possibly wait, and these are high priority.
We so there's like I said before, the traffic lights, the traffic signs and traffic calming and street lighting, they were originally at $100,000 and they were cut in half to help meet the budget. The only other thing, if you wanted to cut a little bit out of it, would be the transportation engineering. If you want to put it off a year, we could probably survive with that being put off a year. The rest are things we need. There's one more public works item, and that's in the vehicles.
And
Okay.
and if Guilford wants to talk about it, but we've talked about it this committee in the past that most vehicles, Guilford had several vehicles on the list to replace this year. This particular one had not originally been on the list, but what happened was that it was totaled in a vehicle accident. So we had to put it on the list, but all of his other pickup trucks to sort of rotate the fleet and make sure that things are, operational within the fleet at DPW have been delayed. So, and that was based on, the amount of requests that we had for fiscal 26 versus the money. So a decision was made with the town manager to postpone most of the vehicle requests.
So Melissa, you're saying the one that we're looking at now, the street light bucket truck it was demolished and that's the one we're replacing? Is that it?
Well, yeah, I think Guilford can talk to I think the insurance company totaled it, but I think that they have a way to reuse it, but they cannot reuse it as the street light bucket truck, which is essential for them to operate and fix the street lights that they were talking about earlier, that, is, how we maintain our own street lights here in Amherst. Is that correct, Guilford?
Yes, right now we're trying to share the tree bucket truck with the street light division, and it's not working the best. The tree bucket truck is meant for tall trees. This little truck here, the street light truck, is smaller. It's like the trucks you see for Comcast cable and Verizon. They're smaller trucks. They're used for smaller heights. It only goes to ours only went to 40 feet, I think it was. So it can take care of the street lights. It can take care of the street lights, and it can take care of the traffic lights. Sorry, I'm kind of blank there for a minute.
Bridget,
Yeah, so, well, I really enjoy these presentations. You really get an idea how much goes into some of the work. But I have two like little specific questions. One is just like, when a vehicle is damaged, would insurance cover that? Like, that is the one thing. And then on the transportation planning line, it looks like that's an annual expense. And so I'm wondering, why is it in operating, and even maybe why is it in your budget? Could it be like planning department or someone?
It's in our budget because our engineers use it the most. It's meant for making changes to the roadways and looking at whether speed should change, whether traffic calming should be go in, traffic signals should be changed. That's what it's used for. So it's more of a public works type view versus a planning view. But when we have a vehicle accident, we do get insurance, and we do have insurance. We got close to $40,000 for the truck that was totaled, and the price is about $250 for the new truck. So this number with that insurance number hopefully will cover the new truck. There are trucks available sitting right now, so hopefully in the next 3 to 4 months, there's still one sitting in the lot that hasn't got increased price for tariffs yet. So hopefully that's what we're hoping for.
thank you.
And I just want to say about insurance. So it's very typical in municipalities that we don't carry replacement insurance on most of the fleets. The exception typically tends to be with police cruisers, because they are so new by the time they get high mileage and they turn over so fast. Those are the ones that I have seen that some communities, and I believe that we have it here, but I would have to double check with Holly, who manages our insurance, that we have only full replacement on the cruisers. But typically most of the fleet is just like when your car gets totaled, it really doesn't get you a new vehicle or even a used replacement vehicle. And that's just really based on cost of, our annual cost of insurance and the number of vehicles we insure. That's sort of that's the way most municipalities handle it. So, and I think that Guilford did provide us, when there was the accident, for the bucket truck. And this was originally in here at 250, but then when he got in the amount of the insurance claim, it was reduced.
Well, thank you.
We do have full coverage for the police cruisers.
Mhm.
I think we just got to the end of the list, unless people want to ask questions either about out years or have an unanswered question from as we whip through this long list. So if not, then we can thank Guilford and Amy for spending time with us and giving this much thought to moving things where possible or reducing the amount of the ask where possible. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So now we're at schools. Education.
So I think schools, here we are. Want to start with Jerry and technology, so since he's first on the list.
Okay. How are we doing, everybody?
Great.
It's been a couple years since I've been in front of you folks. Last year we took a break. We didn't request any funds. So this year we're coming back. The first item we have on the list is for Chromebook replacements. We're looking to replace roughly 300 Chromebooks at $400 each. Of course, that may change now based on tariffs. We don't know how that's going to affect us going forward. So that number is about a third of the total Chromebooks we have in place at the Amherst elementary schools. And the factors are coming into play here. The biggest one was COVID. Okay. I don't know about you folks, but a lot of my date references are pre-COVID and post-COVID. So when we shut down for COVID in March of 2020, we found that we had a scramble to order Chromebooks to have enough to send home with every elementary student. And of course, every other school district in the country was facing that same pressure. And we had to compromise on what we purchased just because there was nothing available. We had to hunt around for many different places. We got devices without the warranties that we would normally pick. We got devices that were maybe not as robust or as durable as we would normally select. So during that period, we ended up with purchasing over 300 devices just for the COVID, to take care of our students during COVID. Another factor that's coming into play is we had another round of purchases of 394 Chromebooks that were a certain brand, and it turns out that they have defective keyboards. And while the manufacturer covered those for a couple of years, for actually 4 years, that coverage has come to an end and they're still failing on us. So we've easily replaced over 300 of the 394 we've bought. Each keyboard is costing us now roughly $55 to replace, and it takes our technicians 25 minutes to replace each one. So we're hoping to start basically phasing those out as we go forward. When Google originally announced Chromebooks and developed these devices, they promised a 5-year lifespan. So basically they would give you updates for 5 years. After that, no more updates, and essentially the devices would be phased out. They kindly, about over a year ago, said, oh, we'll give you 10 years of updates, which is great. However, these devices are not robust enough to last 10 years. We see a lot of attrition. They are either students being less than careful plugging and unplugging them being dropped. We're replacing screens all the time. We do that ourselves. We do most of the repairs in-house on the Chromebooks. So it's just time and attrition that's come to pass here. So that's why we're requesting the Chromebooks. We were in a good place last year. We're not in as good a place this year. We were hoping to hold out until the new school came online and take advantage of those funds, but we're just not able to. So are there any questions, I guess?
I'm looking for others, Bridget and Sarah. Yep. Bridget,
Just
and then Sarah, and then Bob, and then Hala. Yeah.
Jerry, I'd heard reports from families that students whose Chromebooks were broken, they're not able to get them replaced. Is that the scenario that you're seeing?
Well, it depends if you're talking Region or Amherst. So Amherst, at Region, it's a one-to-one program we have. So when they are damaged through whatever method, we repair or replace them. At the elementary school, we haven't been replacing a lot of them yet. We've been repairing them, and we've been able to repair them. But we're seeing failures that are too expensive for us to repair. We've had a number of them that the main boards have been failing. The main boards would cost me at least $125 a piece, plus the time to replace it. So when you're talking about $400 for a new Chromebook with a 4-year warranty, the $125 plus the labor doesn't make a lot of sense, not for these devices. We replace the screens ourselves. Screens are about $35 each that we buy, so those we do. It's amazing how many screens we've replaced.
Sarah,
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. If you said, I missed it, you said it's about, I think 300 Chromebooks. These are district-wide and for any and all grades. And I forget, it's been so long now, do the elementary students take them home, or these are just being damaged and destroyed in the school?
This is strictly for Amherst.
Yeah,
Okay, so it's 1st through 6th grade. Kindergartners, we have iPads in the kindergarten.
okay.
Okay, they stay at the school. I really don't want to face sending younger elementary school students home with Chromebooks.
Oh, I understand. That's why I'm surprised that so many screens are broken if they're just staying in the classroom and being used, by a different student every period or I don't know.
Well,
Depends on,
there's a cart per classroom with enough Chromebooks for the students in that room, so they stay in that room.
right.
I've tried to stress that you assign a Chromebook to a student, but we're not going to charge elementary school students for the damage. And they're elementary kids, they go unplug them, they yank the charging cable out. You see the charging ports get damaged, the USB connectors get little chips off the edges, and finally there was enough that they break. They pull them out and they drop them. I could show you the stack. I'd have to go to a laptop and see on one of my technician's desk. He's literally surrounded by damaged Chromebooks. So we replace all the ones we can, but some of the repairs now are just, the failures are too much. We're replacing cases, covers, all manner of the machines that we can get. Keyboard, I don't know what the fascination is with students picking keys off of keyboards, but it's a thing. So in the keyboards, unfortunately, on a lot of the Chromebooks, it's part of the palm rest bezel piece and the touchpad. It's all one piece. So when you buy that, you have to replace that whole piece. That's why it's $55 or so. Some of them are even more, and I don't replace those. And the way they're designed, everything actually mounts on that piece. So all the boards, everything, speakers, battery, everything mounts in there. So when we replace it, everything comes out, get the new device, screens connect to it, everything. So yeah, so
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Bob, and then Hala.
Why doesn't Hala go first? She
Okay,
hasn't-
Hala.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Champagne, for, I'm really glad we provide Chromebooks. It's a huge factor in equity. I have a question about replacing these weaker ones during the COVID pandemic with the robust ones. Would that company still possibly offer the 10-year of upgrades, do you know?
That's-
And what is the average life of a Chromebook, especially in elementary school, expected to be?
We're finding it varies depending on the model. So the 10 years is Google, so they'll provide 10 years of updates. They're not warrantying or providing any guarantees for the hardware. Okay, so it's two separate things. It's like buying a Windows computer. Microsoft does the operating system and whoever you buy it from does the hardware. So that's what the 10 years refers to. It's Google will provide updates for 10 years. What was the other part? I'm sorry.
Oh, is
Oh,
there
the
an app?
robust versus the
Yeah.
less robust. Yeah, when we look at design, you know, when we're purchasing Chromebooks, we try to look at certain factors, but you can't always unless unless you have some in your hand that you can look at. It's hard to tell. We bought a line of Hewlett-Packard Chromebooks, for example, at one point, and we never realized that the hinge covers tended to pop off all the time. So you don't know. So we tend to look at things that maybe have a little bit of rubber silicone around the edges of the case. So if it is dropped, hopefully that will absorb some of the impact versus the plastic cases on some of the less expensive ones, where you end up seeing the corners of the case cracked and broken and stuff. You know, we repair what we can. We've been using some hot melt glue, the glue sticks that you use for body work when you're pulling dents out of cars. They kind of fill in some of the cracks and the gaps and stuff. So, but you know, we can only do so much with it. Another thing we're finding is that the constant opening and closing, you'd be surprised at how thin the metal is. For the hinge itself is fine, but the piece of the hinge that then goes up and connects to the back, the cover and the screen are very thin metal. So over time, we're seeing those break as well, and having to replace the hinges in one.
Thank you.
Bob,
Yeah, I'm curious about the out years. You go from 134,000 to 207,000, and then you have 200,000. Is that all Chromebooks? Is there some software?
No software is included in the capital request. What you're looking at there are other capital expenses like servers that need to be replaced. Right now, our main servers that we're using, there's 4, have been in service for, I think, 6 years now. They're fantastic. They're running well, but eventually we do have to replace them. You also look at network equipment, the switches, wireless access points, basically all the pieces that keep our network running are included in that. Uninterruptible power supplies, the battery backup. So when the power goes out, we keep things running. All our phones right now are what they call IP phones. So they work over the network. So when the power goes out, the switches have to keep things running. The phones get their power from the switches and they communicate over that. So if the power goes out and everything goes dead, we lose some phone communications as well. And other things in there are projectors. That's the second part of my request, is just some money for replacement projectors. Some of our projectors are getting really old and they're just failing. We have to replace them periodically. So that's some of the other things in that capital request. Printers. I could go on and on about printers, about how I would love to rip every printer out of every school. It's a fight. But it's a fight we're working on and trying to reduce the number of printers so we reduce the costs for replacement. I have printers that are over 20 years old, still in service. So it's not like we just replace them routinely. We replace them when they die or the repairs become, unviable.
Okay.
following up on Bob's, I'm again looking at the out years, Jerry, not the 134 for this year. Does the new school come with everything that building and interior need in terms of technology equipment? And so is some of this request that school and Crocker are connected by what you just said, server, there's a server that will serve the new school as well as Crocker. So it's what happens when you're down to 2 elementary where 1 is brand new is in those numbers. I'm not even questioning them, but that, I assume you factored that in on,
It's to a point, because when we did the out year, we didn't quite know where we were gonna land with the new school or when. So given our district structure, budgeting is a little tricky, right? Because we have 3 districts. So the servers are split between all 3 districts. So the region is responsible for 54%, Amherst 42%, and Pelham 4%. For those expenses as we go forward. The new school, it's not fully funded. Okay, the new school, I don't know what our reimbursements at. I don't know if they're reimbursing us 60 or 66%, somewhere in that range, probably. Shannon she's probably sitting there like, shut up. So we don't have all the money for that. So there is a lot of new equipment planned for the new school. There's all new carts and Chromebooks. There's new different projectors and technology, teacher computers, just a couple of printers, not as many as would be in the Fort River and Wildwood schools, copiers, things of that nature. And new network switches and infrastructure. So all of all of that is going to be brand new. All the wireless network is going to be brand new. The new school, it's hard to capture what my cost will be right now for that, but the new school will have security cameras in the outer areas, the outdoor perimeter of the building, and some of the common spaces on the interior. Because the school will be used by the community after hours, it's been designed so that you can close off the areas that the community will be using, the gymnasium, the cafetorium, those areas. So there will be security cameras in those areas. There's stairwells, for example. If somebody's going to break in, we need to be able to follow them and find out where they are. So some of those expenses you're going to see going forward for the new school. Okay. Crocker, we have to keep Crocker running. They're not going to get that. They had their renovation 24 years ago when they saw an influx of equipment, but that equipment's long gone.
No, thank you, answered my question, so I was thinking this is the interface of everything, to link it up.
Yeah. So, and it's in flux, everything changes. If we're in a better position, if there's a little bit money, I tend to be kind of frugal with my spending. So at the end of the year, then we replace things ahead of time and try to get ahead of things so we don't rely on it so much next year. We also have, as I said earlier, there's iPads in the kindergarten. We're in a good place with those right now. So I haven't put any requests in for those. But and then, going forward, iPads age out. No matter what we do, they get broken. We put protective screens and cases on them, but we have a population that can be pretty tough on them. So those get replaced periodically. But right now we're in a good position, but in the ensuing years, we may need to replace them. So.
Thank you. Any other questions of Jerry? Because I think the next one, 6th grade location, is Michael, Shannon?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Mike is here with me. He's our new director of operations, if you haven't met him before. We're requesting $350,000 for the 6th grade move to the middle school. So we've opened up that chapter again of all of the work that was done by our predecessors of the 6th grade move to the middle school, and we're working with a consultant who is going to review and revise and finalize that plan. So we have that going forward when we build our 27 budget. So when we look at this, some of the costs that we know will need to change to set up the middle school for the 6th grade. There's a door between the 6th and the 8th grade hallway that would also require some swipe access that we would need to have completed. There's work for improvements to the existing bathrooms. I know the bathrooms were a big discussion when this planning was going on before. I don't think we don't have the funding or the space to add additional bathrooms. So if we could improve those bathrooms to enhance the sightseeing lines into those bathrooms and helping with safety and less exposure of the 6th graders to other levels, that's something that we would want to do and ensure for the 6th graders. There's cost associated with remodeling some of the classrooms and creating guidance offices. And there's in the past, there was 2 classrooms that were already remodeled for a science class, and there was additional, there was 2 sinks added and bench tables that were added. And for the additional 2 science classes we would need to add two more sinks and the benches in those additional classrooms. And also that we would need funds to put in a water fountain in the 6th grade hallway. In addition to these costs, there is some equipment and furnishings that we would need to purchase, some new furniture, some supplies and technology purchases. We're hoping that a lot of the things from the 2 elementary schools is salvageable, that we can bring a portion of that for those 6th graders to the middle school, but we do believe there's going to be some need for some new items. And the design study, I guess we've already started partially that work, but the cost to work with a consultant to help plan this out and be efficient and most cost effective in how this 6th grade is going to function within the middle school. And then we have just a small reserve for other costs that we might not know just yet. But based on working with a consultant, maybe something will and likely come up that we will need to fund. So I know in Rupert's plan for what he originally submitted, he had outlined specific costs under each label. For equipment and furnishing, we had changed that I have 2 numbers here. One of them's wrong, one of them's right. So I have to see what math makes sense. For the construction site improvements, the things I mentioned at the beginning were about 230,000. For the design, about 20,000, 10,000 in for other costs that may come up, and the equipment and furnishing at 30,000, or was that the 60? I don't know. I'm not doing the math on the top of my head right now. So that's essentially what we would like to do. We will need funds for this move. Some of this might evolve as we work through, but these are the main points that we wanted to address.
So I'm looking for questions. Nat and then Sarah.
Sure, just make sure I understand this. So the 350 number you're comfortable with, but the breakdown that was originally requested might not be up to date. But of that 350, what's the level of confidence that you have the kind of most current cost estimate, or have you been able to get any kinds of bids or estimates, or these are just internal forecasts, or where do we stand on kind of finalizing those costs?
Yeah, so Mike was able to get a cost estimate of what it would cost for those sinks and the additional benches because we already did it in 2 classrooms, so we had an idea of where it was going to be, and there was a range for that. The improvements to the bathroom in particularly, I know that Pelham is doing something similar for those bathrooms. So, and I already saw those quotes. So I used those numbers in comparison. The cost for remodeling the classrooms, that is a little bit more like arbitrary for how we came up with that. There's some unknowns to that. The design study, I do already know what those fees would cost, so that's pretty accurate. So I'd say we're really comfortable. The director of operations and I met, and I think so. To answer your question from the beginning is yes, the 350 total is the same, but the buckets that were originally presented versus what we have now have changed.
Right.
Sarah, you had your hand up.
I did. I withdraw my question, but I'm just so excited to have this have this in our on our list of possible projects. It's really important. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to ask mine building on Nat's on 350 because a couple years ago there was a 500 number. You know, so I'm just level of confidence, Shannon. It's not to make it lower, but do you potentially need more? Are you going to have enough in this amount? Because the way these are funded, if it ends up costing less, it just goes back. It just gets paid back into the capital fund. So just that confidence on this is enough. And then my related question, this is going to be a little odd, Sarah and Bridget, but do we have a memorandum of agreement with the region saying, yes, we're allowing these kids to be in our building? Because I wouldn't want to, just some piece of paper that says we're about to do construction and make some changes. And I don't expect you to have the answer, but I think it would be good to know that exists. So that's a separate question from, is 350 enough? In meaning,
Right.
Do you need anything, on it? And at one point, I think they're on the second floor. At one point, there was discussion, and I know now the roof is in question, of trying to bring more daylight into the classroom with what are called they're tubes that go through that just bring light in. They're light tubes, and that was a potential design idea, and I don't know whether that's off the list. And if the roof needs to be replaced, this would be not the time to put those in anyway. But it was trying to think of the space the kids are being to try to bring light into them. So that was just one I'd heard. This was way back when people were walking around the space saying, "Oh, the 6th grade could be here." So the confidence is 350 going to be enough?
So to answer that question, I didn't know if we could change that or not. When I was going through this, I worked with the number that Rupert had submitted. Do I feel like 350 is enough? My gut feeling says no. And that's because when I've pulled the documents together from when the 6th grade transition was planned. A lot of the people that worked on that are no longer here. And so I'm reading it through, and as we move through it, are there going to be more considerations that maybe were different from the opinions that we had from previous, or something that comes up that we don't know about fully yet? So I am a little worried of that. If there was the possibility to increase it, I would really take that. And if we didn't use it all and it was turned back, that would be great as well. We're not here to just spend the money like crazy. It's a really important project, and I wouldn't want to short ourselves if there was the possibility to increase it.
And just to keep pushing on that, we're going to have to look at all the numbers. We've been going through every project, so this isn't decision-making time, but would another 50 increase your confidence? When you said your gut feeling is not enough, would another 50 make you feel, I think that's going to definitely be enough?
I feel 100,000 would make me feel safer.
Okay. That's what I was asking for.
Right.
But
And then just to answer your other question about the agreement between the region, I don't know if a particular document exists, but we can look to see if that was already done in the past. But I can tell you that there is it's not developed yet, but we will be developing a lease between Amherst and the region, and figuring out what that amount is, what cost factors into that. It will be a really deep dive in how we come up with that. And that will have to be approved by the commissioner with DESI. So there's more to come, but that'll be towards the end of this project.
Sarah,
Yeah, if I can add, it's my recollection, just from watching school committee meetings as a member of the public, like 4 or 5 years ago at this point, because it may have happened just before, well, it's probably during the pandemic, that the region voted to allow Amherst to use space in the building.
that
But
was
that-
mine also, Sarah, but I was.
Yeah, but there's nothing, so there's that authorization to proceed, but there is no MOA as that I know of, as Shannon said.
Okay.
Surely
and
it
that's-
will come.
I tried to go back and find the date when that happened, but I know when we were applying to MSBA, that had been voted, which made some changes in what we got to do in school design, but thank you.
Yeah, I may be able to find that date for you if you want it.
That's all right. I don't think it's critical for us. I just think that the Amherst needs to know that, this is a go, other than, as Shannon just said, there's got to be a lease agreement. Yeah. So now we're at vehicles.
Yes, so I will start with the electric bus. So there's been an effort to move the district into more green energy, renewable energy. And we've worked with Highland Fleets free of cost at this point, to apply for grants on behalf of the district. We've received approximately 600,000 from the Clean School Bus Grant and about 500,000 in other grants towards 3 school electric buses and charging infrastructure for those buses. And we've also had capital for 525,000 previously set aside for these electric buses and infrastructure, which we have utilized. I think it was about half of that, and we've purchased this year an electric bus that was ended up being reimbursed through the DARA grant, which we just found out a few short weeks ago, for $167,000, which would give us 4 electric buses. And so what we would be doing with Highland is they have this grant money, about 1.5 million in grants. We have some capital left over, and we're requesting an additional 200,000 in capital. And Highland would purchase the buses, they would maintain all of the buses, and then they would lease them back to us. So the bus that we already purchased, even though Highland didn't purchase, they would add that 4th bus into the package of this lease. So they pay for the design and the install for the electric charging infrastructure, and they pay the electricity, they pay for the maintenance for all 4 buses. They are extremely knowledgeable with the utility company regulations, the requirements, the funding, the fee structures. The only thing I believe that we wouldn't be paying for with the buses if something were to happen is the tires. If they needed new tires, that would ultimately be our responsibility. So taking these capital costs and front loading this 10-year contract, which I do know will need to be approved by town council, it would result in, if we didn't have the 200,000, it would result in about 80,000 per year to lease the bus, and that is coming out of the Amherst Schools operating budget. With the additional 200,000 to front load that contract, it would reduce our yearly leasing fee to 52,000 for year one, and the out years of that 10-year contract, it's about $1,500 increase each year, so it's not too dramatic. It's fairly inexpensive. If we didn't move forward with Highland, we would lose the grant opportunities, and this is something that the public really wants, to move towards this green energy. I do want to say, though, that these buses are not in addition to our fleet. We had buses that there's certain requirements based on the age of the bus or the mileage. I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but they need to be decommissioned. So these would be replacing those buses. So we don't have the opportunity much when people talk about capital in our operating budget to have a capital request that reduces operating. So in this case, it would. And from 80,000 to 52,000 where we currently stand. So that's our request, and I will take some questions.
I just want to underscore something in terms of explanation. I just learned this morning from Lynn, we're going to have a request to go to this 10-year lease because you need that to go through an approval that we apparently that we can't do 10-year leases without some approval. So Bob, this is coming to Finance Committee, but this is part of the lowering of the operating cost by front loading a long-term lease is my understanding of what we are going to be seeing as a approval in this leasing arrangement. So it doesn't change this number at all. It just has this other step to it. So Sarah and Nat both have their hands up.
Yeah, so we had, at the region, we voted a few months ago, a contract, I think also with Highland and involving electric buses and infrastructure. Yes, Shannon?
No, so you didn't vote on it. There was a
I'm
presentation.
confused, yes.
Yeah, it was a presentation, and I have to say I did it at the wrong school committee meeting, and we never circled back to say it.
Oh, okay.
Which was a mistake on my part. So yes, there's that.
So everything that we did hear about electric buses is really for Amherst.
Right. So the buses
Okay.
are purchased under the Amherst School District.
Okay. So two questions. I'm confused. Is the $200,000, is that for a bus or is it for charging infrastructure? I thought you said Highland would pay for the
Yeah,
charging
so
infrastructure.
so Highland does pay for all the charging infrastructure, and so we would get the charging infrastructure and we would get the buses, and all of the maintenance required, and the only cost to us is our yearly lease amount and if we needed new tires. So we'd be using this $200,000 to front load the total contract for this 10-year lease.
So it's basically buying most of the lease up front. Is that fair to say? Okay. Okay. Secondly, are these buses are only used for Amherst Elementary? Okay, if they are also used for the region, which I thought was the case, is there some MOA or lease agreement between the districts to use Amherst buses?
No,
or vice versa, or?
So I had the same questions, and I went and I spoke to previous finance directors. Well, why do we purchase the buses out of Amherst and all of the drivers' time and ends up all being charged out of region? And I didn't really get a good answer, but it's the practice that has happened, and then we distribute, like the drivers at the end of the year, we do a whole bill back process between the districts to charge their time appropriately. I don't know the exact reason for why it's out of Amherst.
So you're saying that every bus owned
Amherst owns all of the buses, yes.
that are not rented from somebody else, that are not
contracted out.
Not contracted out. It's Amherst School District has bought all those and owns them. Okay. Curious, yeah.
I don't know if anybody from the town has the history on that.
Well,
but
I don't have the history, but I thought, that there was a bill back process, that basically there was not maybe a formal, lease agreement or MOU, but that, that there was a bill back process. So all of the buses are owned by the town of Amherst. They're stored on the at the middle school. The infrastructure is going to be built at the middle school for this. And then we're leasing that infrastructure. That's the infrastructure is part of the lease. Like, so that's the beauty of this, this thing that Shannon and Rupert had worked on before Michael getting there, is that, you know, we don't, I mean, the amount of money that it would take to, you know, develop the infrastructure necessary to operate these vehicles is just so much. And so we're able to bundle the lease and the infrastructure improvements into one payment. They're basically financing it for us. And then what Shannon is trying to work on is, between the grants that Highland was able to help the school department get, and any capital that we can provide to them, that we're just, like, if you were to lease your own personal car, you can put a bigger down payment than is required, and then your monthly payments are lower. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to really make the capital purchase without the responsibility of owning it and maintaining it and having the knowledge to do, you know, the EV hookups and that kind of thing. But my understanding was that there was a chargeback process between the district and the town of Amherst for all busing, but all the buses and vans were owned by the town of Amherst, or the Amherst Public Schools,
Right,
on
you are
on that
correct.
side of the ledger.
Yes, and you're correct. And I did the bill back process last year. It's an intense spreadsheet and calculation, and so that does happen at the end of the year.
So Nat and then Bob.
Oh, just so I make sure I understand this. So if we didn't have that 200,000 upfront payment, it would be 80,000 a year. And if we made that $200,000 payment, it would be, what was it, 52,000?
Yes.
And so the net present value is not that much different. If I reading my Excel right, it's like $30,000 or something. So there's not that much difference in terms of the economics of it, but it does seem like it is a big difference in terms of whether it comes out of the operating budget or whether it comes out of the town capital budget. And also, if we have the $200,000 upfront that we're paying, does that not get charged back to the region? How does that work?
The 200,000. So that's actually a good question. I'll have to work on this a little bit more, because it's not something we have done in the past. So it's not set up how we proportion those costs and do the bill back. So that is something that will need to be set up for this. So I'm actually glad you brought that up. So that's something that I'll have to do.
Bob.
Yeah, Shannon, this is just, again, looking at the out years, there's 400,000 in FY27 and 400,000 in FY29. Is that additional buses that need to be replaced? Or is it something else going on?
I didn't put in that number, so I'm not sure. Melissa, do you know?
So a lot of the stuff in the out years was left from prior years. So I can only assume that that was information provided from previous administrations. And of course, both all of us here on the staff side of this transaction weren't here last year for this process.
So
Well,
I guess
my memory, Bob, was we were still at, could we make a deal with Highland where they own them, where we didn't have to buy them? So I think these were placeholders for buying, thinking that we're going to get a grant and this is our residual. So if these don't exist, that would be good to know. You know,
Yeah, I don't think there would be a cost, because once we sign this contract, it's for 10 years, so there wouldn't be an additional 200 we'd need next year.
Okay, but that's for this set of buses, right? Or is it for all the buses that we have?
This would be for the 3 buses they would be leasing to us, and the 1 electric bus that we purchased this year would be
Right.
covered under this lease agreement.
So again, the question I have is what do we need to replace in the future? Because we've got more than 4 buses.
Well, and
And
this line, Bob, I'm looking at the line is only electric bus. There isn't a line for other kinds of buses at all. You know, I'm just looking, the title is Electric School Bus and Charging
Right.
Infrastructure.
I guess again, it's not something you have to answer now, Shannon, but we need to look at what we're going to need to replace over the next few years, because buses that we currently have now are probably, some are getting to the end of their lifespan.
Right. No, I agree with you. And Mike's only a month and a half or so into the position, so we're definitely going to be reviewing all of our capital costs together.
Sure.
And I'm looking forward to doing that. We just haven't gotten that far just yet.
No problem. No problem.
And I would say too that I think that they purchased the 1 electric bus last time, and then this lease of the 4 electric buses, I think that there's an appetite like we were doing on the town side, that as these vehicles get replaced, that's the type of vehicle we'd replace it with. And it makes sense to me based on what they're doing now, that we would continue to just renew leases on these really large items in order to make it manageable, especially since when we talked to Highland, Shannon was kind enough to invite me to those conversations. When we talked to Highland about the infrastructure, they were designing it so that it could be added onto, so that as the fleet grew, we would have the infrastructure to, well, there might not only be 4 stations there now. I can't remember how many there were supposed to be, Shannon, but if we needed it to be 8, that infrastructure was going to be built in. And as we amended or continued to work with them, there was expansion possibilities for this type of work.
Mhm.
Is that correct, Shannon, or am I just making up stuff? Because sounds
That's
good.
correct, yeah.
Thank you. So I see both Sarah and Bridget have their hands up.
Who you calling on? Okay. So just maybe 2 comments. I don't know if they're really questions, but so this charging infrastructure is going to be set up at the middle school because that's where the bus lot is. And if the infrastructure is there, then the bus lot, that's going to continue to be the bus lot no matter what the school is used for, should it cease to be a middle school, right? So that's, I don't think there's any room at the high school for this, but I guess I would just ask if Amherst is going to keep its buses on regional property, could it possibly be done at the high school? So I just put that out there. The second thing I wanted to mention is that the region just inked a transportation contract with, is it Highland? I don't remember, somebody, 10 years. Yeah, and so now if there's this question of whatever you call the reconciliation between the district and Amherst at the end of the year, I mean, I'm all in favor of accurate accounting, but I could imagine that may throw somebody's transportation budget off. So.
Yeah, I just want to say the transportation contract was 5-year contract with Comiscus. So I just wanted to correct that.
Bridget, your hand went up and down, or you just?
I was just taking it down in advance since you called on me, and
Okay.
Good job pronouncing travel cause there, Shannon. The one thing that I know not every detail of, but that the schools are part of Amherst's overall sustainability plan. So there's, to some degree, we're locked into doing electric vehicles.
Yep. No, I did know that. And we had actually a year ago when the price of the bus was so extraordinary. We had to discuss on, should we have a few of the old types? Could we buy more for the same amount of money than buying one? It was a discussion, that we just punted on, saying right now, this is the direction we all have said we're going. And we'll see what the price of these becomes when the various bizarre changes the US government is thinking of doing hit the price of a vehicle. Yeah. Sarah.
I would just throw out something that was a consideration at least some years ago when there was first talk of moving to electric buses, was whether the electric buses could hold enough charge to do all the runs, including up into Shutesbury and back, before they could go get recharged, because it's just boom, boom, boom in the morning, So I don't know if we will ever be able to have only electric buses, if Amherst buses need to be used by the region. So,
and then there was hybrid buses are coming online too. So it's not a one or the other. There's something in between, but I think that has to be thought through for so it was both the long distance trips for carrying kids, Sarah, but it was when they take kids on a field trip, they couldn't use the electric bus. It was just, it wouldn't recharge, and it wouldn't hold the charge long enough. And the first one we had broke down all the time. So it was not a good first one. So I see someone's hand went up and down. Was that Mike or?
Yeah, that was me. You addressed my point. I was going to talk about like longer sports field trips. That would be an issue as well, like you just said.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say that the runs that we typically do in-house are not the Shutesbury Leverett runs. It's better for our district to do the shorter runs that are close to the school than to do those long ones, because our drivers are not just drivers, they're also maintenance. So the quicker they come back, the more of time that they have in maintenance. And regardless whether our contract does the closer runs or the further runs, it's the same price. So it makes sense to have them do those longer runs and not those shorter runs.
Thank you. So we have one other one, right? The special education vans.
Yeah, I can jump in on that one and give Shannon a break. So it's a request for 3 special ed vans. We need to replace 3 vans that we currently have that have aged out or are aging out. Typically, vans, I think what I've heard is that they last for about 200,000 miles. And in particular, like our van, they idle a lot, which causes a lot more damage to the engine and reduces the life of it. So, and then last year, we had received funding to purchase a van, and I guess the manufacturer canceled the order on us. So we're also going to use the funding for that. So hopefully we replacing 4 vans for next year.
And Michael, do you want to talk about how come Rupert had shared with Shannon and I that these vans cannot be hybrid or electric because of the lift that's required to be put in the van is in the wrong place for the battery, and the welding, that if you try and use a hybrid or electric vehicle for these, it will installing the lift will delete the warranty of the van. So at this time, all of the vans are required to be gasoline. Are they gasoline or diesel? Michael, I don't remember.
They're gasoline.
And there's a reason why. So like, some of the vehicles in some of our fleets are required to either be hybrid or gasoline or diesel because the power needed or other accommodations, and this is one of those exceptions.
Bob,
Yeah, our ambulances, they are diesel, they're not gasoline. I don't know if with this technology exists for gasoline, but they've been fitted out with something that shuts the engine off after it's idling for a certain amount and then runs it on electricity after that. It sounds like maybe you can't have a battery in these vehicles. Anyway, that's a solution because that reduces the wear and tear on the engine. I don't know if we can get that for these vans or not.
So what Rupert had said was that it's the placement of the battery in this
Battery.
Ford van design and where it is in relation to a lift that's problematic. It's not that the van can't be converted. It can't be it's not that the van can't be hybrid, but a hybrid van can't have a lift, which is these are all of these vans have special entrances and lifts.
No, understood.
but, well, I guess, Bob, I don't know whether the US makes them, but when you rent a car in Europe that's gasoline, most of them shut off at a light. They don't idle in the same way ours do. You know, they're quick starts. So for the ambulances, I think they needed a special mechanism. So I'm speaking about something of which I know nothing other than the car goes quiet and it's not a hybrid and it's not an electric car. And they said, "Oh yeah, don't your cars do that?" And I go, "No, so
My car does that, Kathy. I hate
Does
it
your
when I
car-
turn it off. But
Mine does too. Mine does too, and it's a push button start. But
yeah,
I don't know
Yep.
whether you that goes along with it or not. But
yeah.
but
But
it is,
it's not considered a hybrid. It's just considered a regular.
yeah, I don't have a hybrid.
Yeah.
yeah.
But
So
that is another way that you can reduce engine idle.
so Bridget, your hand is up on this.
Yeah, really quickly, could you tell us the year and the mileage? We had a comparison sheet for the departments, but I didn't see that here. Like what year the ones you're replacing is and what's the current mileage?
So just so everyone knows, as he's looking for it,
Yeah.
Melissa has updated the vehicle, so all DPW is on, and I think these vans are on, so we can find out what, yeah.
I think, so these three vehicles are 2010, 2011, 2013. 2010 has 226,000 miles. That was in December of last year, the mileage. Let's see, 172,000. And I believe the other one was 232,000.
So high mileage.
So high mileage, yeah, they've kind of already exceeded their expected lifespan, and they're becoming more expensive to maintain. And we're investing money in vehicles that aren't going to have much life either way, I think.
Thanks for those numbers.
Sarah,
This is for Michael or Shannon, I guess. Is it the case that either the region or Amherst also needs to contract for van services for some children?
Yeah, so
And-
we,
And would it be cheaper if we could buy more vans? We'd have to pay the drivers, of course.
yeah, so there's a couple things to that. So we need vans for students that come to our school, and that's something that our drivers do. What we have done in the past with our out of district students is that's contracted out, and that is a van that the contractor provides and brings them to that distance to wherever it is that placement is. It is We have a driver shortage. So if we added more, there's no guarantee that we're going to have drivers. And the distance that some of these placements are, the mileage, it's pretty far. So then that driver, it doesn't make sense to go out there and then they have to wait till the school ends, because if it's an hour and a half or whatever it is, then they'd have to wait, because why would they come back to work a little bit and go there? So it's more cost effective to actually contract out those out of district placements for transportation. And the one thing that is a little bit better on that side. So yeah.
I don't see any other hands up, and I think that's the whole list. Just a question I have, and again, I know that you probably haven't looked at it. If you could look at the out years on, maybe it was on the first page. I had a question, not on the Crocker one, but there was a list of a variety of things called schools, facilities. And if it wasn't Crocker, I wasn't sure why we needed to do any of these, because the new school won't need them. So it's just, it's, you know, it's on Melissa's list. It's got HVAC system, it's got electrification, it's got school security, external door, grounds. So it's not listed under Crocker. It's just listed on schools, and there are several of them in FY 27, 28, 29, and 30. So I'm not doing the bus, I'm not doing technology, I'm not doing copiers, but I'm doing the things that seem to be related to the building. And I didn't know what those were if they weren't Crocker. So we're trying to get a sense of 5 years, not just the current, and I don't need you to answer that right now, because
Well,
these, yeah.
I will say, I don't know, I'm not looking at what Melissa has pulled up, but I'm looking at my most recent elementary 5-year capital plan, which has 26 and out years, and we don't have anything listed for Fort River or Wildwood on here. We only have Crocker Farm expenses. What I'd have to compare to what's on Melissa's thing to see if they're the same that I have. So there's likely some adjustment, or it might just align with Crocker.
Oh, so that would be, so Melissa can send you this, and you can just then give us, they can be the updated out years. You know, and the Crocker, there's a roof, there's a HVAC, there's some big items that
Right.
have kind of, I know they were placeholders, but I wasn't questioning the Crocker. I was questioning, what are these others? What's an HVAC system if it's not Crocker, for example? So that's just a question, not to be answered now, but as we talk about what discussions we've made, those out years can be changed if you give us new information.
Okay, I can work with Melissa on that. I do have one other question, because this is my first JCPC meeting. What is the process for approvals, or how long do we know if we do receive the
So
capital?
we are just in charge of giving a recommendation to the town manager. So the process is, this goes recommendations to him. He does or doesn't accept what we've recommended, and then it goes into the capital plan. And at that point, it gets voted on by the council. So there's a public forum. So if, for example, we recommended a higher amount than what you originally asked for on the 6th grade move, that would be a recommendation in our report. And we wouldn't know until we saw his report whether he'd put that in. So
That's May 1st, right?
But yeah, and that comes to the council on May 1st. You know, so in the past, a lot of what we recommended did change the capital plan. He would accept them, but not always. So that's the process. Is we have to get a report. Our schedule is by middle of April at the latest. We get a report that's, here's our recommendation. And to the extent he, meaning Paul, but between Melissa and Paul, as this has moved along, they might change the numbers. So they're already changing in the plan we're looking at, and that becomes his plan. But we only know that at the rear end. In the past, it's looked very close to what came out of our committee, but not always, not all the pieces. So I don't know whether that's helpful. So
Yeah,
our report,
absolutely.
we'll have it done by the middle of April. Paul's 5-year capital plan will be to the council by May 1st. You know, so you'll see what's in each, and all of the line items for FY 26 will be there, you know, what's being recommended. Sarah, do you want to add to that?
Well, I just, my question is 98% answered because I saw, I mean, I have last year's report of JCPC, but then I see in the packet for today, a draft of the capital improvement plan. And I just wanted to confirm this committee is not responsible for the capital improvement plan.
That's correct.
Paul is going to do it, and I guess Melissa's just sharing it with us, but
Well, and what she did is the paragraphs on each of the projects we're looking at are potentially more useful than looking at the requests that came from the department on the sheet. You know, so that's like helpful. So to the extent we say we don't want to do this one at all, that was just for an early draft of what a paragraph about the electric school bus contract would be, or what the move would be. We don't do that. The last year JCPC report, Sarah, as you see, is shorter in that it has this what was proposed to us. We're making recommendations, and here's the 5 years look at it. We don't go into a whole list of projects because it's already assumed that we were looking at a list. We don't. So that was just her trying to make it more helpful to us to know, remember what each of these projects is without having to go off to these.
got it. Okay, got it.
And I got to do it anyway, so.
She has to do it anyway. So it's
Okay.
easier to look at 4 sentences than at a whole sheet and try to figure out what did Guilford mean with $500,000, you know, or why do we need this truck thing. So that was not, and so we do have a full vehicle list and we have a full building list. And the only one, I looked at the buildings quickly. I didn't see the old North Amherst School, Melissa, but I looked at it really quickly. I'll just send you notes.
I thought I had it because I talked with facilities today to get all the updates.
You know,
So-
I'll make sure I just look at it. And then my other question is the North Amherst Library is not just in good condition, it's in excellent condition. We just rebuilt the whole thing. So I want to just change its rating.
I can change that. I was just
Yeah,
sort of, you know.
we just spent $2 million of a donor's money on and making it very spiffy. So are there other, while we have schools here, are there any other school related and timing? So Shannon, you'll have whatever we do, you know, by middle of April, and to the extent that's been endorsed, it will already change in the tables a bit. You know, we'll get some kind of feedback, but then 2 weeks later, you'll get the manager's 5-year plan.
Thank you.
So I think that's it. I think we got through all the projects for today, and Bob's hand is up.
Yeah, I just have a
Have a good evening.
about-
You too.
I saw that the regional school district had recommended some capital improvements. How does that work? I'm not sure how, you know, who gets the final say on that. And then I know that whatever the final is, the costs get distributed to the 4 communities. I understand that, but who kind of gets to decide whether we're going to do these projects or not?
We don't see it as a list, Bob. We get a package with a total and that we vote on it. And so it goes in, if there's borrowing for it, it goes into that, you know, debt line. So
Right.
we meaning JCPC doesn't see it, and we meaning the council doesn't see it. We see what's in it, but we don't look at the pieces of it.
And isn't that voted by regional school
Yeah,
committee?
it's voted by the regional school, and there's a specific formula that divides it up. So
Yeah.
so there's not an opportunity to say, hey, how come the roof isn't in there?
That's fine. That's
You know,
fine. I just wanted to understand
Yeah.
what, you know, who had the final say in that. That's all.
And so I want to thank all the people from school here and just take the last couple minutes to, if everyone's comfortable, we do have some members of the public and we've put public comments at the end. So want to see if our public, if anyone would like to make a comment. And if so, raise your hand. No hands were raised. So we have no public comments today, although we had some public. For next week, I sent everyone a draft of what I think we can get through next week. We've got conservation and planning that we didn't do in terms of projects, that list of projects. And then and Melissa's now given us the vehicle list and the buildings list. So we have an inventory. We don't have to have a long discussion on that. So next week, everyone should come prepared for initial discussion on, are there projects we recommend deleting, decreasing? What, if anything, do we think about resident capital requests, and see how far we can get with the discussion on what we want the content of our recommendations to be. And that's next week. And then we have time the following week to continue that discussion before we have to draft the report. So getting as much done as possible. And Melissa, if you could just get Guilford's feedback on those resident requests, so we at least can say something about them, price tag wise, or whether he can accommodate them in his existing budget and they would be high on his list. It would at
So,
least.
I mean, I did send them all and I can send them all to him again, but so there were two that weren't specifically related to like lighting and safety. So one was a culvert question, which would be like a completely different, area, but that would be an ad. And so do you want me to get him to verify that culvert, you remember the culvert?
Yeah, I do
one?
remember the
Yeah.
culvert. So just to get React, that's to the extent that's going to happen, it's going to be in the works as be part of a larger plan. And then the other one was the garden. And Stephanie indicated, it was Bridget, you particularly liked the community garden one. And Stephanie.
And then there was one for like a bike lane, and that's a little more complicated, I
Yeah,
think.
and so I think, some of them we can just say this doesn't work because it's a larger issue on redoing the road. So we can just, in the past, what we've done is we've got 8 resident requests or 10, and we highly recommend 2 of them. We don't have to say why we didn't do the others,
Okay.
We can pare it down and then people figure out where it goes. So that would be the other thing to come in with. And Stephanie indicated if she took a look at that, maybe it could be accommodated, but the other place it could be accommodated is potentially a CDBG grant. I mean, they do depending on where it is. So
Yeah.
we wouldn't get an answer.
CDBG is federal, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, we're not gonna
no.
give
So we
it-
may never have that money.
We won't have any CDBG money, I can guarantee.
So it's the last year
To
of,
give back what we've gotten.
especially since it's because
absolutely
it's
not.
Amherst in the middle of Massachusetts, it'll be a particular have a target on its back. So I think that's it. And the minutes, Bob is not quite finished with his draft, but I'll get it to everyone. And so if the minutes are helpful on remembering what our discussion was, these videos or Zoom, they're all recordings are being posted really quickly. So anything you want to go back to, what did we say about these projects, and rethink them one way or the other. And with that, I don't think, unless anyone has some other comments, so those were my last few minute comments before we see each other again a week from now. And I want to thank Shannon, Jerry, Michael for joining us, and I think for a very thoughtful list of projects. So thanks very much for the work that went into these. And I think we can adjourn. If everyone raises their hand, they're ready to adjourn, then we can do away with formal voting on it. Yes, we have consent to adjourn. So thanks everyone for your time. We are adjourned.
Thank
you.
Bye.
Everybody.